What did a British child eat for school dinner in 1963? Liver and onions, spam fritters, white fish in fish sauce, boiled cabbage, suet pudding, and custard on top. What does that same child's grandchild eat for school dinner today? Chicken nuggets, pizza, chips, and maybe an apple. In the 1960s, children had to eat what was put in front of them. There was no choice. You couldn't leave the table until your plate was empty, and that plate usually held things most adults today wouldn't touch. Here's the strange part. That generation never complained about it, because they didn't know anything different. This video walks through 15 foods that were completely ordinary in 1960s England. Behind each one isn't just the story of what they used to eat, it's the story of why they disappeared, and what we lost along with them. Number 15 might strike us as pretty unusual today. Number 3 is now sold as a wellness product for £35. Subscribe and let's begin. 15. Spam fritters. In 1963, spam fritters were served in the school dinner hall. Spam was a leftover from the Second World War. The tinned, processed pork that Hormel Foods launched in 1937 was shipped from America to Britain in huge quantities during the war. With fresh meat scarce during rationing, spam became a source of protein. And once rationing ended in 1954, spam had already settled permanently into British kitchens. It was cheap, it was ready to go, it was easy to cook. Straight from the tin, sliced, coated in flour, fried. Children loved it. Today, spam is seen as a symbol of cheap, processed food, but back then it was seen as an innovation and people were proud of how practical it was. 14. Tripe and onions. Every butcher's window had it on display. Tripe, a traditional cut of beef usually cooked in a creamy sauce. It was one of the most common and cheapest meat products in 1960s England. Butcher shops sold it already cleaned and boiled. You'd take it home, finish it off with onions and a milky sauce, and it made a lovely Friday night dinner. Tripe shops were especially common across the north of England and the Midlands. Bradford, Manchester, Leeds, these cities had a tripe shop in every neighbourhood. Today, almost all of these shops have closed. The modern distaste for tripe is partly cultural and partly the result of one generation's taste simply changing. But tripe is an extremely rich source of collagen. It naturally contains the very ingredients found in many products sold today for gut health. Eileen didn't eat tripe for her health, she ate it because it was cheap. 13. Bread and dripping. This might sound like the strangest one to us today. Dripping, the fat that drips from meat while it cooks, was saved and reused in 1960s British kitchens, but not only for cooking. Dripping was spread on hot toast, sprinkled with salt, and eaten just like that. Bread and dripping. This might sound shocking to us today, but back then it was seen as cheap, filling, and genuinely delicious. It was children's after-school snack. It was the working man's lunch. Dripping was a fat that held its structure well at high heat, meaning it was actually more stable than the refined vegetable oils used today. But once the animal fat is bad narrative took hold in the 1970s, dripping vanished first from kitchens, then from the dinner table altogether. 12. Stewed eels. In East London, this was fast food. Eel was stewed with cucumber juice and herbs. It was served cold in small special bowls. Alongside it came liquor, a parsley starch sauce. Pie and mash shops served this trio together. Pie, mashed potato, and stewed eel. These shops still exist, but very few remain. Historic pie and mash shops like M. Manze's and Cook's have become tourist attractions in London. Once this was the working man's daily lunch. Eels bred abundantly in the Thames. They were cheap and rich in protein. But between fishing regulations and river pollution, the Thames eel population has dropped dramatically, and eel quietly disappeared from British tables. 11. Devealed kidneys. This dish sat on the breakfast table in Victorian times. By the 1960s, it was still served in many homes as a weekend breakfast. Beef or lamb kidneys were fried in butter and seasoned with a mix of mustard, Worcestershire sauce, and pepper, served on toast. The word divelled meant spicy. It described the sharp bite of the mustard and pepper mix. Today, kidney is one of the offal cuts almost entirely abandoned by British cooking, and yet kidney is an extremely rich source of vitamin B12, iron, and zinc. Its nutrient density alone could match the combined value of dozens of supplement capsules. Eileen didn't take supplements for this. She bought kidney because it was cheap at the butcher's. 10. Faggots. A traditional dish from the Midlands and Wales. Faggots, finely minced pork and other cuts of meat mixed with oats and onions shaped into balls and traditionally wrapped in caul fat. Brains faggots had been on the market since 1938. Mr. Brain's faggots were hugely popular across the north and west of England throughout the 1960s and 70s. Nose-to-tail eating is taught today under the name sustainable eating. Faggots were the purest expression of that philosophy. Every usable part of the animal was put to use. Today, artisanal faggots are sold in a few boutique butchers at 10 times the old price. Just a moment. If you know someone who loves lost foods, their grandmother's recipes, or the question of where we came from, send them this video. 9. Ox liver. And here's the most important one. In 1963, ox liver appeared on British dinner tables at least once a week. It was served in school canteens. At the butchers, it was one of the cheapest cuts on offer. Today, frozen organ meat capsules sold as beef liver supplements go for £35 to £50, marketed as the new superfood of the biohacking community. Why is it so valuable? A 4-ounce serving of ox liver beats almost any other food for vitamin B12. It's also extremely rich in vitamin A, iron, folate, riboflavin, zinc, and CoQ10. One serving of liver delivers these nutrients with far higher bioavailability than a good daily multivitamin ever could. Eileen didn't know any of this. She just bought it from the butcher, coated it in flour, fried it, and served it with onions. Then in the 1970s, the saturated fat is bad narrative took hold. The cholesterol debate began. Liver became one of the dishes people turned their backs on. Today it's back, but in a 35-pound bottle in tablet form. 8. Poted shrimps. The pride of Lancashire. Tiny brown shrimp, freshly caught from Morecambe Bay, were lightly cooked in spiced butter and pressed into small ceramic pots. As the butter cooled and set, the shrimp stayed fresh inside it for weeks. This was both a cooking method and a way of preserving food. The butter formed an airtight seal, no fridge needed. In the 1960s, you'd find it on every market stall and on the snack menu of every pub. Today it's sold in a few British gourmet shops, but at a much higher price now, and Morecambe Bay shrimp catches are now heavily restricted by quotas. 7. Brawn. Let's start with the name. Brawn, a jelly made from various parts of a pig's head. The head was boiled, the meat separated from the bone, set in its own broth, then cooled. It was served cold, eaten with bread, alongside mustard. Today this dish is dressed up and served in boutique restaurants across much of Western Europe under names like fromage de tête or head cheese. But in the 1960s, brawn was simply an ordinary product of the butcher's effort to use every part of the animal. According to researcher Dr. Annie Gray, nose-to-tail eating the whole animal wasn't just a food philosophy, it was an economic necessity. Everything got used because nothing could be wasted. 6. Peas pudding. Peas pudding hot, peas pudding cold, peas pudding in the pot. 9 days old. This rhyme had been around in England for centuries, and the dish was still common in the 1960s, especially in the north. Dried peas were soaked beforehand, boiled, then mashed into a puree, seasoned with salt. Usually served with boiled pork or bacon. Extremely rich in protein, extremely cheap, and extremely filling. Today this dish survives almost entirely in a few towns in the north of England, especially around Newcastle in pie and peas shops. To find peas pudding in London, you'd need to go looking for a very specific shop. 5. Spam in the school dinner hall. This deserves its own mention because it's not just the food itself that matters here, the context does too. In the 1960s, once a plate landed in front of you at school dinner, you had to finish it, you had no choice. I don't like it wasn't accepted as a reason. The dinner lady could keep you sitting at the table until your plate was clean. This tells us two things. First, that generation grew up far less fussy about food. There was a cost and a kind of honor in eating something you didn't like. Second, those meals, liver, tripe, faggots, felt completely ordinary to children. Because they were treated as ordinary, their parents ate them too, their grandmothers cooked them too. Try serving liver in a school dinner hall today. You'd get complaint emails from parents. 4. Tinned salmon sandwiches, the essential item of high tea. Sunday afternoon, a formal visit, a special occasion, tinned salmon sandwiches would be on the table. Buttered white bread, tinned salmon, thinly sliced cucumber. This sounds ordinary to us today, but in the 1960s, tinned salmon was a mark of luxury. Fresh salmon was very expensive. Tinned salmon was food for a special day. Today, fresh salmon is one of the most common fish products in supermarkets. Aquaculture, farmed salmon, has made it available every single day, and with that mass availability, tinned salmon stopped being anything special. But what made that sandwich special wasn't only what was in it, it was the the ritual of it, sitting at the table, eating thin slices of crustless bread. 3. Biro wand Windsor soup, a soup stretching from the Victorian royal court all the way to the 1960s. A rich, dark brown beef soup made with beef, root vegetables, Worcestershire sauce, and flour, sometimes called Britain's national soup. It was served in British Army canteens during both the First and Second World Wars. It sat on Grand Hotel menus for years. Today, brown Windsor soup is mocked in comedies poking fun at Victorian cliches. It's become a symbol of old, dreadful British cooking. But a well-made brown Windsor soup is actually extremely tasty. The problem was never the soup itself. It was that what it represented went out of fashion. 2. Kedegree, a breakfast dish that came from India. Brought over from India during Britain's colonial era, kedgeree, smoked haddock, boiled egg, rice, and curry spices made its way onto the British breakfast table during Victorian times, and it continued to live on in many households as a Saturday or Sunday breakfast, right up until the 1960s. This sounds unusual to us today, a spiced dish at breakfast, but Britain's Grand Hotels still serve kedgeree. Some London brunch spots list it on the menu as a heritage British breakfast, and the combination of fish and egg protein is perfect for the morning. Eileen never needed to see a nutritionist to know that. 1. Olivia and onions. And the most shocking part isn't the dish itself, it's the story of how it disappeared. In 1963, ox liver sat in every butcher's window, a few pence a pound. It was served in school dinner halls once a week. At home, it was cooked on Tuesday evenings. Then, in 1961, the American Heart Association issued its first official warning about saturated fat. In 1976, the Royal College of Physicians adopted almost identical guidelines in Britain. The cholesterol is dangerous narrative began to spread. Liver, with its high cholesterol content, became a target. Mothers stopped feeding their children liver twice a week. Consumption dropped dramatically from the 1950s through to the 1980s. And today, frozen beef liver capsules sold as grass-fed beef liver supplements go for £35 to £50 a tub, marketed as biohacking superfood. On social media, the ancestral eating movement is rediscovering liver. Eileen never paid £35 for this. She bought it cheap from the butcher, coated it in flour, fried it, served it with onions, and nobody thought it was unusual because it was just Tuesday dinner. Take another look at these 15 foods. Some of them really are best left in the past, products of that era's food shortages born from economic necessity. But some of them, liver, tripe, potted shrimps, faggots, only disappeared because the story around them changed. This isn't modern anymore. This isn't healthy. This is food for poor people. And now the very same things are coming back, wrapped in different packaging. Artisanal, heritage, sustainable, biohacking. 2 things I'd like to ask you this week. Which of these foods did your grandmother or your mother cook? Does she still cook it? And which one on this list surprised you the most? If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Tap the bell icon so I can find you when the next video is ready.